What's up, guys? I'm nobody special, and I'm very happy today because I've got my buddies Todd and Travis are here with us today, and we are going to talk about a seismic shift that just happened in the real estate market. It just happened yesterday, Friday, the 15th of March. There was a settlement with the National Association of Realtors stemming from that big antitrust case back in November, and this big settlement is going to change everything in the housing market. And I was reading about this yesterday, and a lot of this stuff, admittedly, it goes right over my head. So I figured it's time we go right to the experts. So I brought Todd and Travis on today to talk about this. How you guys doing today? Todd, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Great to see you, Jack. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Now, Todd, you are a licensed real estate broker in Maryland, and also you've got your own YouTube channel, Sachs Realty. I'll put links down below to all that good stuff if you guys want to check that out. And Travis, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing outstanding, sir. I got some great sleep. I fell asleep at 8 o'clock last night, woke up at 6 o'clock. I'm feeling fresh. Talked to Todd. I'm ready to light him up, man. Ready to talk about this. Always a pleasure to be with you, Jack. Absolutely love what you're doing, but be safe, brother. You worry me. You worry me, Jack.
Travis, your energy level is admirable, especially considering it's still a little bit early on Saturday morning here.
Thank you.
Now, you're also a licensed realtor in the state of Texas, also a licensed real estate school in Texas.
Yes.
And
Yes,
also the host of the Real Estate Mindset channel. Once again, links down below. So,
yes. And a loan officer as well.
And a loan officer.
Wow. I would arguably say that my predominant amount of my skills in real estate is from doing loans and hustling up money.
I feel like you guys should have sent me your resumes before we even started this whole thing. This is very impressive. I'm feeling a little inadequate right now by the qualifications of you guys. All right, let me just touch a couple of quick points about this settlement real quick, and then we'll go to you guys for your take here. So essentially, my understanding of this big settlement with the National Association of Realtors is that the standard 6% realtor commission is now gone. This was a $418 million settlement in this case. This was based on a big antitrust ruling that happened back in November, where the National Association of Realtors was found to be on the hook for $1.8 billion in damages, which apparently, because this is an antitrust case, the damages are potentially tripled. So we were looking at possibly $5.5 billion worth of expenses for NAR. So they're getting off cheap here at $418 million. Now, the Association of Realtors represents about 1 million realtors nationwide. And there was a couple of key points in this settlement. It prohibits agents' compensation from being listed in the MLS listings. It eliminates the requirements for brokers to subscribe to MLS. The buyers' brokers now have to enter into written agreements with the buyers. Sellers no longer pay both brokers. So it seems like this could really stir things up in the housing market. Now, Todd, let's start with you here. Give me your overall opinion on this ruling, and what do you think this means for the housing market and, of course, more importantly, home prices going forward?
Well, Jack, number one, the article that you're reading from or wherever you're getting your information from, unfortunately, mainstream media has failed again that they do not report accurate information. And I get, they whatever they're being fed, right? These special agendas. Number one, let's adjust the standard 6%. That is not even true. First of all real estate commissions are negotiable. There is no standard fee. There's no flat fee. That, in fact, would violate the Sherman Antitrust Act. That would be in itself criminal. So just the fact that they're reporting a standard fee tells you it's wrong. There's also more than 1 million realtors. It's about 1.5 million. It tapped out at about 1.6 million in 2022, where there was actually more licensed realtors than there were, actual houses for sale. But the important thing here is that all of this propaganda and all this news still will end badly, in my opinion, for the consumers. Everyone that I have spoken with since this hit, really the news industry on Friday, was the fact that, after talking with several brokers and realtors across the country pretty quickly as this news was unraveling, what the general sentiment is that NAR sold us out. So a lot of the brokers and agents feel that NAR actually sold out their membership instead of fighting and continuing to fight for the industry. And what I believe, Jack, ultimately is going to happen is this is going to penalize the buyers. I think that ultimately this is going to penalize the buyers because it's going to eliminate probably a lot of buyer representation. It's going to take out, maybe it will take out 1 million agents as a result if this thing does get signed by a federal judge. But I know with NAR being attacked really for decades and decades, 40, 50 years, the Department of Justice has been going after the National Association of Realtors. They've made a lot of changes. This one is a devastating blow if this thing gets signed. And I'm not advocating that there doesn't need to be change in the real estate industry, but it's like hitting a gnat with a sledgehammer at this point. And who is going to ultimately pay for this? Number one, the lawyers are getting rich. This is career changing for these attorneys at play. I mean, they're making a ton of money at these with these lawsuits. But what it's really going to do, in my opinion, is it's going to affect these first-time buyers, especially, Jack.
Wow. So it's pretty strong language there from Todd. Obviously, not necessarily a big win for the consumer, it sounds like, in your opinion, and certainly not for the realtor. Todd, real quick, does that mean is the seller then kind of coming out ahead here? If clearly the home buyer and the realtor, in your opinion, are taking the short end here, does that mean the sellers are coming out on top in this case?
I mean, it may end up that the sellers end up with more liability. I mean, it depends on how things go. I think the big risk here, and you guys are smart enough to know this, but there are a lot of sellers that believe that they don't need real estate agents. We've had for sale by owner forever, right? The biggest need, in my opinion, for representation from a buyer standpoint, a third of the buyers, which historically over the last decade or so has been about the first-time home buyers, about 30-some%. Okay, I think that these are the ones, and there is question as to what has the representation looked like over the last 3 years with the overspending, over list price, no inspections. There has been a lot of ill advice, in my opinion, maybe from the buyer's agent. But that doesn't mean that you kill that off completely. I think what we need is a cleansing. We need higher accountability. We need more transparency. But to break up the way that things have been done, number one, to expect a buyer, if this is where we're going with this, to expect a buyer to pay for a buyer's agent when they barely have enough for a down payment for a home. One may argue, hey, maybe they just won't buy one now. But not having representation is the way that I see it. They're going to be fed to, the listing agent in a lot of situations where they're just, could be just completely taken advantage of being unrepresented. There is this multiple states, I think it's 13 states in the U.S. Actually have a buyer agency where you're not allowed to have a seller represent both parties. The seller's agent can't represent both parties in these 13 states. So that means that if a listing agent is representing the seller, they can't represent a buyer. Well, how could they? That would be a conflict of interest. But all the other states say, oh yeah, if you're a listing agent, you can represent the buyer and seller as a dual agency. How the hell will you do that? Who's paying you at that point? Who is really your allegiance to? And how can you, with commission breath in a lot of situations, how in the world are you going to be able to represent that buyer when you represent the listing? I've been against that from the beginning. It has been illegal in Maryland for quite some time. And I think that this is going to be just complete chaos and mayhem if this federal judge signs off on this settlement.
Wow. Travis, I see you chomping at the bit there. Give me your opinion on this. Is Todd, is he on the right track here?
I mean, the reality is, Jack, is we don't know exactly what's going to happen next. It's, with these changes, it will start out polarizing. It will start out chaotic. But what really needs to happen is the industry needs to absorb a new process. And once a new process is absorbed, as professionals, we will know how to navigate that more. But this situation reminds me a lot of what happened during the GFC when they passed the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act. As a loan officer, full-time loan officer back then, they completely re-regulated us. I went from making 4.5% commission to 1.5% commission. And that was very chaotic. It was very violent, but it ended up being the right thing to do for the industry. And so when I look at this, I want to believe this is, a step in the right direction. I want to believe that. I want to believe this is going to be painful, needed growth. But like Todd said, it's difficult to know that for sure because, my initial thinking here is yes, we need changes. We want to believe in changes. The consumers need to be protected. But the way that this reads is it's really putting these buyers hanging out to dry. Like Todd said, buyers generally, like an overwhelming amount of them, they can't afford to pay an agent to represent them when some of these agents are getting $10,000 to $15,000. And so as a result of that, Jack, I worry that there's going to be more buyers that are not going to have representation. So I think at first this is actually a bad thing for buyers. I think it's going to be harder for buyers to find, to know what to do next. I think it's going to start out polarizing, but on the same sense, I think it will potentially, it just depends, right? But I think that it could potentially push demand down a little bit more. If buyers that are out there trying to purchase houses based on the fear of missing out, and now they have to pay $10,000 for their agent, maybe that slows them down a little bit. Maybe that allows inventory to come back. And the other thing is, I was thinking about this. Yeah, this is, is this really, how bad is this for buyers though, Todd? Think of the fear of missing out. Think of the push. Think of like, oh, just buy now. Only home values only go up. So yeah, I mean, I agree. It's going to endanger buyers at first, but then I look back at the last 2-3 years, and buyers agents didn't do a good job to begin with. But again, it's hard to tell, Jack. My other huge concern here is with the builders. I think that the builders are absolutely the biggest winners of this settlement. And if consumers really want to understand what I'm talking about, understand that when it comes to purchasing new homes, they are not regulated the same way as agents. And so if people are really concerned about what's going on in real estate, understand it's way worse when dealing with these new home builders. They essentially have a monopoly on the system. There's corruption, there's fraud, there's greed, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And now with this new ruling, I think new home builders are going to bully agents. They're going to continue to try to get agents, stopping from representing buyers. And they're just going to have a bigger monopoly over the entire industry. So, again, I'm worried, Jack. I think it's, overall, though, it could be a great step in the right direction. On top of buying demand potentially being tampered down maybe a little bit, I also think potentially it will incentivize, again, potentially, depending on the market, it will incentivize some sellers to sell their house. If the sellers can now sell their houses for half of the amount of fees, maybe, just maybe, it will entice them to sell, right? More initiative to sell. So if we have dynamics to where demand is now being pushed down more and selling is now being propped up a little bit more, that will help us bring back inventory to the market, much needed inventory. Inventory will bring back price discovery, things like that. We also look at unemployment and recession. But overall, I don't like how they rolled this out. I think that, again, I want to believe in it. I think that it has elements that could help the industry. But the fact that there is no plan in place is putting a lot of pressure on the buyers. It's putting the buyers in danger. And that's what I don't like. And that's why I'm saying, Jack, the industry needs to figure out how to absorb this process and to do something about it. Because it's, the fact that there's no commission listed at MLS now, again, that's putting a lot more power in the hands of those builders, right? And in the hands of those sellers. So, again, I think it's a massive hit, and it's even more of a reason why, if you are buying right now, it's even more important that you purchase real estate with fundamentals, understanding wedge, cash flow, and with your guard up. Buyers are not going to be wrecked, Jack, and the fact that it's going to be even harder now for buyers to get legitimate, honest representation. That's not a good start. Can it end with something great? I hope so, but at first, I don't like what this is doing to buyers, and I do not like the power that it's giving to builders.
It's funny you should mention the builders, Travis, because I looked at what some of the real estate stocks did yesterday after this announcement, right? Zillow got crushed. Zillow was down 13.5% yesterday on this
Wow.
news. Compass was down 14.3%. Redfin was down 4.9%. But apparently the stock market saw the same thing you did with the builders, because we had NAR was up 2.5%. Pulte was up 1%. Toll Brothers up 1.8%. So while you've got, I don't know what you call Zillow and Redfin, the listing stocks, they're getting hammered. The buyers were actually rallying a little bit. It was modest gains, 1 to 2%, but on a down day. So obviously the stock market is seeing the same thing you're seeing when it comes to the builders really liking this decision. Now, it's also interesting that you should mention that this might slow down the first-time home buyers, because I know you guys have probably spoken to some first-time home buyers in the last year. If you slow them down even more, those guys are going to be moving backwards because they're just getting crushed by these interest rates and these prices. So we probably have some potential first-time home buyers watching here. Let's talk a little bit more about price. Now let's go with you, Todd. Travis mentioned a couple of things. Slowing down the first-time home buyers maybe kills a little demand. So that would put downward pressure on prices, possibly incentivizing sellers with the lower fees. Could that possibly put some downward pressure on prices? And, the last thing I know you mentioned, there's a lot of people who are real estate agents right now, realtors, that probably won't be realtors a year from now, right? You said 1.5 to 1.6 million. And I know realtors are probably struggling right now just with the low number of transactions and the few sales that are happening. There's just not many commissions to go around. Now you're going to shrink those commissions. So you're probably going to get a lot of realtors losing their jobs over this. Could we potentially see more homes hitting the market because realtors are losing their jobs? Because we know unemployment is tied to real estate too. And if we're talking about hundreds of thousands of realtors losing their jobs over this, well, that's a lot of home inventory hitting the market too there. So what do you think the overall effect on home prices from this is going to be?
Well, first, let's talk about the agents losing their jobs. Most agents don't make a living anyway. I mean, it's the 80-20, it's probably worse than that. But I think that the ones that are going to be out of the business are the ones that hardly transact, or, maybe they just received their license in the last couple of years, because a lot of people did when it was hot. They didn't think the sky would fall. And regardless of this lawsuit, that trends would end, buying trends would slow down. But certainly the costs are unaffordable. I don't think affordability from this lawsuit is going to make any great changes, because the sellers are going to want every penny that they can possibly get. And they're still going to go off of comparable sales and what they think their house is worth. And they're still probably going to be represented by a listing agent. But I think the issue here has never been the fact that the system is necessarily broken, right? The system has worked for a long time. I'm not mad at the way that the agents got paid. I think that the seller is the one that has to incentivize the commission of their house. And it's a big asset. So, but what I think that where the industry has failed, and this really isn't an NAR issue. This is a broker issue nationwide. This is a training issue. This is a management issue, is that a lot of the buyer agents themselves don't even understand agency or real estate agents. They don't even understand what agency is. It's the most confusing thing to learn when you're going through real estate school. It's where they get hung up the most, and we lack education in that department. So a lot of the agents, the buyer's agents, they tell their buyers that they're free because they're getting paid by the seller. So what they are, the seller's agents. So they basically lie, and unknowingly, I'm sure, but let's just say they mislead, not lie, but they mislead the buyer to thinking that they're free. And then all of a sudden they get to the settlement table, or they get their settlement sheet, which if they have a loan is called an ALTA nowadays. And they get that ALTA sheet and they look at their buyer agent's commission and they're like, whoa, like I just brought every penny that I have to the table here. I overpaid for the house and I had no idea you were getting this amount of money. I would have hired, maybe not used you. I'd have maybe used somebody else that would have represented me better. I think that's the issue. But as far as pricing goes, I don't know that this alone will drive that down. Travis, to your point about the loan officers, you guys do the least amount of work. Okay. The loan officers do the least amount of work. Right. And I'm telling you, I don't care who gets upset by that. You guys don't. You have an underwriting department. You get fed the leads by the real estate agent. You're more concerned with coddling real estate agents in general in your industry than you are going out and getting buyers yourself. You don't do any marketing. You don't do any effort whatsoever other than coddle agents, take them to lunch, and call on them and things like that. So to get that your commission chopped in the first place, y'all made way too much money. I still think you made way too much money. Okay. Now you're a real estate agent, my friend, and you just got back into that like a month ago, and you'll be out of it next month with this lawsuit gets signed. But my point of the matter is, and that's no chop on you, my brother. I love you, but what I'm saying is that the issue isn't just with real estate agents. The issue is all across the board. It's with title companies. It's with loan officers. It's every aspect that has a tentacle in this business, right? So if we're going to be picking on one group of people, we got to look at the whole thing at large. But I think that I think now Zillow, they're crushed because who is their client? Buyers agents. Buyers agents go away, you're screwed. Maybe Zillow knew it was coming, and that's why they became a real estate broker in all 50 states, including DC. But I think these loan officers, they can't remove themselves from the problem. And Dodd-Frank, the biggest thing Dodd-Frank did a lot, but you guys didn't even have to hold licenses prior to Dodd-Frank. You had zero, regulation. Loan officers.
Oh, Travis,
100% wrong.
I just know you can't wait to respond.
100% inaccurate. And I know that because I had to get my license to be a loan officer in I think it was 2003, 10 days after I turned 19. But I understand what Todd is saying, and he's not wrong. The hard part is like, who's the good agent? Like, good agents are hard to find. And as far as loan officers, a good loan officer, in my opinion, is going to destroy these FUMOing, cheerleading realtors, because here's the thing. Good loan officers never turn their back on clients, and most consumers cannot afford to buy a house. And so good loan officers will follow around and help people for a year to 2 years, looking at their credit, saying, hey, good job, encouraging them. And then once I finally get these people pre-qualified, Jack, after a year of working with them, I call their realtor back, hey, I got your client approved. The realtor's like, huh? I'm at my cousin's birthday party. I just got a job working at In-N-Out Hamburger. You have a client ready for me? Like, wow, Travis, you are the best. So, I think it depends on the person as far as like who works harder, who doesn't work harder, But the thing that Todd is saying, as far as prices, don't ever say that again about loan officers. But the thing that Todd is saying, but he's right. I can't stick up for loan officers. Todd's right. Most of it is begging realtors like, please, realtor, let me take you out to lunch. Give me your clients. And honestly, I think that's a society thing. In my opinion, buyers should be going to the loan officers first, but they don't. They go to the agent first. And so it is just the way it is. But the thing is, Jack, like Todd was saying, I don't think that this change alone, like just this alone, is enough for prices to go down on their own. I think we have obviously, I think representation is important. I think being honest and forthcoming and using data, I think that's very, very important stuff in the industry. But brother, I think the bigger problem here is the greed and people capitalizing on the housing market. 10% of America looks at single family residences with a dollar sign. 90% of America looks at the housing market with children. So they're putting a dollar sign on where people are normally raising their children. It's the American dream. And honestly, I think that's the huge problem, whether it be institutional investors that have actually a lot of ownership in pockets around the nation, mom and pop shops, people owning 100, 200 doors that are SFRs. I'm not talking apartments. I think that's the issue here. And I think the even bigger issue than that, Jack, is what the Federal Reserve has been doing to our market over the last 3 to 4 years. My God, I remember, and so does Todd, we remember what the market was like before lockdowns. It was nothing like this. It was way more balanced. And so because of those low rates, the stimulus, there's so much stimulus, we didn't even need it. And they're just stimulating. And now we're paying for it. Now the rates are higher. No one can afford a house, and it's a complete mess. I think the Fed needs to fix the problem before all this other stuff. And that's why I hate this rollout. Again, I hope it's painful, needed growth, but they're doing it at a time where it's like, dude, it's too late. Like we needed to do this back in 2019, not in the middle of a horrible housing market crisis where we got other problems to focus about. We have so many problems in the housing market. I mean, I think that in some markets as well, Jack, like it will help a little bit with prices going down, but in other markets it won't. I constantly talk to Todd. Todd and I are in opposite dynamics in our markets. I'm in a market to where I could be mean as a buyer's agent, right? I can walk away. I can ask for ridiculous things from the sellers. But Todd, and I feel so much compassion for Todd. He's got all this skill. I mean, he's a lion. He wants to kill the gazelles. He wants to take it by the throat and go eat them in the jungle. But he can't do that. His market won't let him because his market is tight. He's on the East Coast. I'm in Texas. I go 1 mile and I find 100 new houses as far as inventory. There's building everywhere. So it's not enough for the nation. This change alone is not enough for the entire nation to feel, I think, an impact as a result specifically from that for prices. I just don't. I think the real issues here is the Fed, it's the government spending, the deficit spending, and that is honestly what needs to really be fixed. Although, again, I think that maybe this is a good step in the right direction. But that's all I have to say. And then just the last thing, loan officers are way harder workers than realtors.
Well played, sir. I would add the addendum. I got to get in my talking point. The Fed doesn't need to fix the problem. The Fed is the problem. All right. So we just need to just get rid of the Fed. Hashtag end the Fed. I put it on everything for a reason. So it sounds like both of you guys, despite the disagreements on coddling of loan officers and realtors, it sounds like you both are in the same camp that there's going to be a temptation here for buyers to go it alone without representation. I heard you both mention that here. So I know you both deal in this space. So I'll give you each, like, say 1 minute here at the end. What would you say to somebody who is considering going on their own as a buyer without representation? Number one, would you say do it, don't do it, and why? And then real quick, if you absolutely insist on doing it, if you had one tip you could give them, what would it be? We'll start with you, Travis.
Brutal, dude. So, man, the first thing
that wasn't planned, by the way. This is all on the fly, so I didn't warm these guys up or anything. So Todd gets a little bit more time to think about this one.
I mean, the problem with answering that question is there's no blanket answer because there's different levels of consumer intelligence. If we had consumers that were as intelligent as, say, you, I, Todd, understanding to look at data, simple math, okay, go represent yourself, but that's not the reality. And so I fear what's going to happen, Jack, is people are going to be overconfident and they're going to get eaten alive. That's my biggest fear. They're going to get swallowed up. They're going to be getting good deals that they think are great deals. They're not going to know what to look at to see, are they hiding anything? Where's the commission at? They don't know how to review documentation. The documentation is overwhelming. And I would say that if you are out there, you're going to represent yourself, you better do so with your guard up, and you better do so understanding how real estate works, wedge, cash flow, how comparable sales data works, understanding that one of the most important things, Jack, if people are going to represent themselves, one of the things I teach in my Discord is do an analysis on the subdivision. But the problem is generally you can't do an analysis on a subdivision unless you have access to comparable data, and not just through the title company that has just general information. I'm talking transaction details, like whether sellers concessions, things of that nature, right? So I would say, be very, very cautious moving forward. And if you do plan on doing that, equip yourself, be an expert. Do not take this transaction lightly. It is the biggest transaction of your life. So treat it like that.
Some pretty strong words there. Swallowed up, eaten up. I mean, to me, I hear that. I think don't. And then obviously data is your friend, especially comp, subdivision analysis. Very good. And study up. Understand you're on the opposite side of the deal as people who do this for a living. So don't for a second think, 10 minutes of research, you're going to be ready to rock with these guys. You're going to get eaten alive. Thank you, Travis. Todd, same question. What would you say to somebody considering representing themselves in a real estate deal? And if they insisted on ignoring your advice anyway, what is the one thing you would warn them about, or the one tip you'd give them?
I think that we're at the top of the market, at least in this cycle. And what that means is that potentially anyone buying a house right now could be overpaying. We look at the history of time, home prices have always gone up despite even what we saw in the Great Depression or the Great Financial Crisis, where we watched home values tank. They eventually got on top again. If you're buying a house right now, you should be looking to stay somewhere for at least 7 years, not something that could be a 3-year investment. A lot of the agents didn't represent their buyers well, if at all, through the last 3 or 4 years. So that's why we have some of the biggest buyer remorse that we've seen in the 30 years that I've been serving the housing industry. If you're going to buy, of course, I think having a qualified buyer's agent, and that's through the interview process, not mom's best friend, that you should determine the expertise level and the history of that agent being able to have a satisfied client database, and maybe even talk with some of their past clients like you would if you were getting a kitchen contractor to renovate your kitchen. But I think the most important thing, if you're going to overpay, and that's questionable whether you're overpaying right now or not for a predetermined period of time, whether it flattens out, goes down, whatever, we know eventually it'll go back up with inflation. The most important things are make sure that that property checks 99% of your boxes. Don't sacrifice that. If you're going to overpay for something and have a lifestyle, make sure that that checks your boxes, right? Don't stretch on that. The other thing is make sure that you can afford it. That if somebody loses their job, you can handle it for 6 months because we may see high unemployment. The third thing is more important than your agent is a very good inspector. And I'm not talking about a inspector that just passed a course. I'm talking about a contractor inspector that has torn houses apart and has built houses. You want to make sure that the components, hire the HVAC expert to take that heating and air system apart and analyze it. Have somebody check your electrical systems in the house, make sure if it's aluminum wire that it's been dealt with properly with copper pigtails and things like that. Make sure that roof is good on the house, because if it's not, they value houses like in thirds, the roof, first, second, or third life term of its life, 3, third, and a third. If it's in the final third, find out what a roof is going to cost to replace, because you may not have an insurance claim if you get a hail damage like where Travis is in Texas or Florida. A lot of that is changing, right? And then finally, scope the sewer line, because the sewer lines on the house is something that you can't see. And it could be $12,000, $15,000, $30,000 to replace. So if you're buying an existing home, make sure you do that. And if you're going into the new home construction, hire an inspector. If you don't have an agent, tell them you want an independent inspector to come through, because in every scenario where I've taken a buyer through new home construction, we found things that wouldn't have been identified without an independent home inspector.
Wow. You touched on some really big things there with the inspection, right? The sewer line, the roof. When I bought my house, stucco was a big thing. That was an $80,000 time bomb that was hiding within the walls that thankfully I hired a good inspector and we caught that and we were able to negotiate that ahead of time. And guys, if you're hearing all this stuff, right, about the comps, about the subdivision analysis, and then the inspector and scoping the sewer line, and if you're hearing this and it's scaring you, well, then that just goes to show you that going it alone in a real estate transaction is probably not in your best interest. So that's the one thing. Don't fall into that temptation here to go by yourself now, save $5,000 or $6,000 on a commission for a realtor. If it's something like a sewer line, like Todd just mentioned, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars in expenses for something that you could have caught for a whole heck of a lot less if you had hired the right help. So Todd, Travis, thank you guys so much for taking your time on a Saturday to talk to us about this. I appreciate you guys sharing your professional expertise. I also just love the tension between you two with the loan officer and the realtor. It's just amazing. Just really fun to watch. Nice, good, clean fight. punches above the belt, go back to your corners, wait for the sound of the bell. That was fun.
I
to
love
watch,
Todd,
guys.
man. I mean, I love this man.
Yeah,
I want to get him. I want to get him sometimes. I'm gonna get you, Todd.
Travis, you know, man, we're buddies.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I love this guy. I mean, we probably talk every day. I mean, it's so important that because Todd keeps me strong. I hope I do the same to him because he's in such a, with his boots on the ground skills, Jack, and the fact that his market is the exact opposite of mine. I mean, we can really share some really valuable intel because I'm like, oh my God, Todd, I'm beating him up. And Todd's like, oh my God, I'm getting beat up. So there's like, we're asking why. I'm asking myself, okay, why is he going through that? Why am I going through that? Right. So the whole thing, man, I feel so blessed and honored and humbled to be here with both of you who are so much more smart than I am. I mean, the community on YouTube, you guys, is what an absolute blessing. I mean, the viewers have been a blessing. Learning as much as we've learned, meeting you guys. I absolutely love YouTube, man. I'm not even sure if that was I'm answering a question at this point.
Travis, real quick for the record, what state does Todd do business in again?
It's none of your business. I know what you're doing.
No, okay. That would be
yeah, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing.
Maryland.
Yeah, I'm with this. I'm with the slow reading group. I told you, man.
Hey.
Hooked on phonics did not work for me.
Jack, it's funny. So he was saying something to me like Maryland or something. I mean, he was all over. It was like I don't know. We got to give him a break. I mean, we got to give him a break, man. He's from California. You know what I mean?
Todd's not wrong. Todd's not wrong.
We got to give him a break.
Yes. Thank you,
man. I got to have a big audience from California. I'm only kidding on that, but it's funny because everybody I talk to are like, these Californians are moving in. They're coming in. They're invading my state. So I have to poke a little bit of fun. California's a beautiful place.
Well, I can tell you, as a New Jersey transplant moving into Pennsylvania, I got plenty of that because, they were good, but nice neighbors. They said, "Welcome, don't change our laws," and I knew exactly what they were talking about. So I was like, "Don't worry, I'm the last guy you need to worry about. I'm leaving Jersey for a reason."
Oh, that's fun.
All right, guys, that was Travis from Real Estate Mindset and Todd Sachs from Sachs Realty. I'm going to put links to their channels down below. Two fantastic real estate and finance channels, both of them. So check them out. Guys, thank you so much for taking your time. And everybody else, until next time, live small and dream big.